we asked Mary Ann and Denise to give us their thoughts about how they and their children's lives were affected by autism. We'll hear first from Mary Ann.
Matthew had no language whatsoever until he was about 9 years old. Since that time, the language that he has is very limited. It is largely not functional. He speaks in echolalic phrases, which are repeating the scripts of movies and videotapes that he's heard.
We go to what McDonald's we go to,
about how we get in line.
McDonald's we go to, do we go in,
About how we get in line.
inside and right, do we leave?
He has an incredible ability to pull a line out of a script and plug it into a real-life situation, which does help him with his ability to communicate. But because of his limitations in understanding communication and expressing himself, he's always had some behavioral challenges as well. He doesn't understand the rules, he doesn't understand society's rules, other people's rules. He is very impacted by other people's behaviors and by their facial expressions and their tones, and he can get easily upset. When my two daughters are having an issue with each other and raise their voices, Matthew will immediately be in the middle of it, yelling because he doesn't understand that their dispute doesn't involve him. And that plays out across environments and across the places where he spends his day. He's very frightened of animals and of babies and young children because he can't predict their behavior. So he's very anxious around them. He has great difficulty with transitioning from one activity to another, from one place to another. So those times of transition are frequently the times that we see challenging behaviors in him, and that we will see an escalation in his anxiety level. He also has a great deal, as he's gone through adolescence and puberty, he's developed a lot of obsessive compulsive behaviors. He hoards things. If you were to see the family room in my house, you would think a bomb had gone off. We probably have 200 Dunkin' Donuts straws lined up across the floor. Every videotape he owns is lined up in a domino pattern across the floor. He has a number of animal figures that he's very attached to. He probably has 12 of the same figure. Every time he goes to the store, he has to get another hippopotamus, and they're all lined up on the floor, as well as his magic markers. So, and God help any one of us if you try and negotiate through that room and knock any of the patterns out of place. That will immediately set him off. So he's got a lot of challenging issues these days.
Can you talk a little bit about his inappropriate behavior on occasion, and how do you manage those behaviors when they are exhibited?
We pick very carefully the situations that we involve him with outside of our home, because he is a big guy, and when he goes over the edge, he can get out of control. He will throw himself on the floor. He will start to scream and yell. He will flail his head around in ways that can be frightening to people that don't understand autism or have not been exposed to it. And as a result of that, we really, I think we were far more courageous in our younger years when he was younger and littler, and if he had a situation that was challenging him, we could pick him up and get him out of there. Now we can't negotiate with him physically, so we are very careful about screening activities. We don't let him far out of our sight. There are very few times that he's away from a family member or somebody who knows him very well, that can manage, is familiar with how he will act out, and knows the coping strategies to help calm him.
We posed the same question to Denise.
Can you tell me a little bit about Alexis's social behavior? Because my observation just meeting her today is she's very social.
She's
Many kids
very
aren't.
sociable. She is. I mean, she's a happy child. She loves meeting people. A lot of times she just hug and caress people. She's always letting everybody know she's happy. It's always, I'm happy. You ask her, oh, how are you? I'm happy, But she's, as far as her social behavior, at one point she wasn't interacting with kids or adults or anyone. It's like she stayed in her corner, did her own little thing. Now She's more sociable. She interacts with people. Sometimes she's spontaneous to go to adults and grab their hand, or at least give them a hug to let them know, I don't know, that she's happy, I guess, and then like they can always tell. Some people that I meet on the streets or picnics or whatever the case is, we just went to a picnic, they knew off the bat that she was autistic because her behaviors, she rocks, and I'm breaking her out of the rocking, she stops immediately.
Once a diagnosis of autism is determined, the many decisions as to how to address the issues it presents begins. We asked Dr. Malone his thoughts concerning appropriate treatments and programs.
The treatments are really not medical for the most part. So even though you're talking to a doctor about autism, most of the treatment is educational, developmental, language-based, and the concepts that are really strong in the field of autism right now is early identification, finding children as young as you can, providing intervention services like experiences in socialization, structured language, more flexibility in their thought, as early as you can, and that's what makes the difference. It's really not medications or diets or anything like that. It really is interventions with people who understand about socialization.
Can you talk a little bit about applied behavior analysis?
Applied behavioral analysis is one technology of an early intervention system, and it has a lot of data behind it because it's a data-driven program. It really is behavior modification that's specific for children who have autism. So, for example, one of the big issues in autism to start with may be just getting a person's attention with looking at you. And so the first goal in behavioral analysis might be to say, let's practice looking at another person, and you get rewarded when that happens. And as soon as you do that, then you build on that and you say, what's the next social skill that you need besides looking at a person's face? That's what behavioral analysis is. It's a layered approach, one thing built on another, using positive rewards to make it work. It's very powerful.
So far, we've heard from Dr. Malone, a specialist in autism, and 2 mothers of children with autism. We also interviewed a lawyer to better understand the legal ramifications involved in dealing with autism. Bridget Burke is an attorney from the Albany Law School who has assisted many parents of children with disabilities in achieving quality educational services.
First off, that autism is this generic label for such a wide range of individuals, and that oftentimes, unfortunately, when we're serving people, people focus in on the label and think that that tells them what the person's needs are. So I think that that's particularly troubling. And I also think that it's very important that the people who are serving individuals with autism have experience in working with people with autism, and sometimes there aren't enough of those people around. And I think if we can just remind the school districts that for all children we're supposed to be looking at the individual needs of the child, not the label that the child has. But in terms of documenting it, good evaluations are important. That we don't look at the label, but we look at a thorough evaluation that tells us about the child's strengths and weaknesses and what difficulties they're going to have in an educational setting and across all settings.
We asked Bridget this question. Typically, preschool kids are listed as children with disabilities, as opposed to children with autism. Does that impact on a family's ability to obtain services geared to an individual with autism?
Not necessarily. Any identification should really mean that the child's going to get the services that they need in order to make meaningful progress, and that you would look after the identification at the individual's needs to determine what services they're going to get. But there is a special provision in New York regulations that allows children with autism to get sort of a minimum level of services, like language services and training for the parents. And perhaps without the label of autistic, they might have some difficulty with the school district in accessing those services.